She stood frozen as her boss tore into her in front of the entire office, his words slicing through the silence like a knife. "You're a nobody," he sneered. "You add no value here." And just like that, Camille Rutherford, 28, was fired on the spot while the people she once called colleagues cheered as she packed her things. No goodbye, no sympathy, just smirks and whispers as she walked out feeling worthless. But what they didn't know was that the same woman they humiliated was about to rise higher than they'd ever dreamt possible. Because 6 months later, when the company was suddenly bought out, Camille didn't walk in as a former employee. She walked in as the new owner. And the moment she stepped into that boardroom and faced the very people who once clapped at her downfall, every single one of them went silent. What she announced next? It changed everything. Camille Jennings was the kind of woman people underestimated. At 27, she carried herself with quiet confidence, sharp intelligence, and a work ethic that rarely left room for mistakes. She'd been with Halverson and Knox Marketing for nearly 3 years, climbing her way up from assistant to junior strategist without any special connections or favors. She worked late nights, absorbed every insight like a sponge, and often did the work of others just to meet deadlines. But despite her results, Camille never seemed to earn recognition. Her boss, Nathan Rourke, was the golden boy of the company, charismatic, cutthroat, and allergic to humility. He favored flashy presentations over thoughtful strategy and valued loyalty only when it served him. Camille, who cared more about doing good work than playing corporate politics, had been a thorn in his side from day one. The tipping point came one Monday morning. The office buzzed with excitement. A major client had just pulled out of their contract, and tensions were high. Camille had spent the weekend analyzing data, compiling a pivot strategy, and drafting a recovery proposal she believed could salvage the account. She walked into the conference room, USB drive in hand, ready to present. But Nathan was already there, leaning on the edge of the table, smirking like he owned the room. "Camille," he said loud enough for the room to hear, "why don't you sit this one out? You've had your chance." Before she could respond, he turned to the team. "Everyone, let's take a moment to address the elephant in the room. We've had some dead weight around here." He paused dramatically, his eyes fixed on her. "I'm letting Camille Jennings go, effective immediately." There was a stunned silence. Then, unbelievably, a smattering of applause. Some smirked. A few whispered behind their hands. The final blow came when Nathan added, "She's a nobody." She added no value. This team deserves better. No one defended her. No one stood up. Camille felt her stomach drop, but she kept her chin up, blinking back tears as she packed her things. She walked out without saying a word, holding her head high. That humiliation could have broken her, but it didn't. She spent the next 2 weeks in bed, angry, bitter, then determined. Camille poured her energy into freelancing, working with small businesses and startups. She started a consultancy from her apartment. Word spread fast. Her work was clean, strategic, and effective. Clients started recommending her. 2 months later, a tech company in Austin asked her to develop a national campaign. The results? Revenue tripled. That's when investors started calling. Camille wasn't just rebuilding. She was rising. Quietly, powerfully. But the real twist came when a private equity firm approached her about a buyout opportunity. Halverson and Knox Marketing, the very company that humiliated her, had been bleeding clients ever since Nathan doubled down on flashover results. Their largest investor wanted out. The firm was for sale. Cheap. Camille didn't hesitate. She signed the acquisition documents 6 months to the day after she was fired. The name on the paperwork? Camille Jennings, founder and CEO of Jennings Strategic Group. No one knew she was the buyer until the Monday morning boardroom meeting. The entire office had been summoned for an urgent company-wide announcement. Nathan stood at the front of the room, clearly nervous. Rumors had been flying for weeks, and he knew the company wasn't doing well. When the doors opened and Camille stepped in, wearing a sleek black blazer, portfolio in hand, the room went silent. Even Nathan's cocky grin faltered. She paused at the head of the table, then calmly said, "Good morning. I'm Camille Jennings." And as of this morning, I own Halverson and Knox." Everyone froze. Camille glanced around the room, locking eyes with a few of the very people who had clapped when she was humiliated. "I have a few announcements to make." You could have heard a pin drop in that boardroom. Camille stood poised, cool, unreadable. Nathan, pale and visibly rattled, tried to recover his voice. "There must be some mistake," he said, laughing nervously. "This is a joke, right?" Camille didn't flinch. She placed the folder in front of him. Inside were signed acquisition contracts, financials, and ownership transfer documents. Every line legally binding. She waited as he skimmed the first page, then turned visibly red, like the blood had rushed back into his face, and then immediately drained again. "This is real," she said calmly. "6 months ago, you said I was a nobody, that I added no value. Today, I am your employer, and we're going to talk about what value really means." A low murmur rippled across the room. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The same colleagues who had laughed at her humiliation were now frozen, their expressions a mix of regret, fear, and confusion. Camille continued, stepping to the head of the table. "Let's get one thing straight. This company is drowning, not because of talent, but because of ego. Over the next 2 weeks, there will be changes, major ones." She flipped open a second folder. First, performance audits. Everyone's metrics will be reviewed, fairly this time. Real value will be measured by results, not by favoritism or office gossip. The HR director swallowed hard. She had been one of the loudest voices mocking Camille on her way out. Nathan forced a smirk. "You don't understand how this business works." "No," Camille said, turning to him. "You don't." She tapped the final document. "The investor who sold me this company was tired of watching it burn. You torched long-term relationships for short-term applause. You cared more about perception than results. And you made the fatal mistake of thinking that being liked was the same as being respected." He opened his mouth again, but she cut him off. "You're dismissed, effective immediately." Gasps echoed. Nathan slammed his palm on the table. "You can't fire me." "I just did," Camille replied coldly. "Security is waiting outside." He looked to his old allies, the same ones who'd once laughed with him, but not a single person moved. Some even looked relieved. Nathan stormed out, muttering curses under his breath, but no one followed him. His fall from grace was quiet, undignified. Camille took a deep breath and turned back to the team. "For the rest of you, this is a second chance. I know what it feels like to be overlooked, to be underestimated. I also know what it feels like to rise after being broken." She paused, letting those words settle. "You have 1 month to prove you belong here. Show me real effort, creativity, and teamwork, and I'll back you. Fail to evolve, and I'll replace you. This company is being rebuilt from the inside out. If you're not part of the solution, you're already part of the past." Camille turned and walked out of the room. Whispers followed her, but not a single laugh. Not this time. Back in her new corner office, her old boss's office, she sat down slowly, staring out at the skyline. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory messages, LinkedIn tags, and industry buzz. People who once ignored her were now begging for a meeting, but she wasn't interested in revenge anymore. She was building something now, something better. Just as she leaned back, her assistant, Rachel, a shy intern who had quietly reached out to her after the firing, walked in. "There's a Mr. Adler in the lobby, CEO of Vantage Corporation. He said he saw the news and wants to talk partnership." Camille smiled. "Send him up." Camille rose to shake hands with Mr. Adler, a tall, seasoned executive with sharp eyes that missed nothing. His company, Vantage Corporation, had been circling Halverson and Knox for a while. They'd pulled out of a merger when they realized Nathan's numbers were smoke and mirrors. Now, they were back, but only because Camille was in charge. He cut right to the chase. "We've watched your rise closely. What you did in 6 months? It's unheard of. I want to work with you." Camille had expected a discussion about collaboration, maybe a test project, but then Adler leaned forward. "I'm talking equity partnership. Merge my tech vertical with your marketing division. Joint ownership. We scale fast." She stared at him, stunned. That kind of offer didn't land in someone's lap unless you had something rare, and he knew it. But just as she was about to respond, her phone buzzed again. It was Rachel, her assistant, messaging from the reception. "You won't believe this. Nathan's here, and he's not alone." Camille raised a brow, excused herself from Adler briefly, and stepped into the hallway. There he was, Nathan, looking like he hadn't slept in days, flanked by a lawyer, and trailing behind him was Julia Monroe, Camille's former best friend, a woman who had ghosted her the day she got fired, a woman Camille hadn't spoken to in 6 months. Julia looked down when Camille's eyes met hers. Nathan's lawyer stepped forward. "My client is requesting access to his personal documents stored on company systems. His employment has been terminated," Camille said flatly. "He has no legal claim to anything on those systems." Julia suddenly stepped in. "Camille, please, we made a mistake." Camille turned slowly toward her. "We?" Julia looked stricken. I encouraged Nathan to let you go. I told him you were getting too much attention. I was jealous. You were growing too fast. I didn't think it would go that far. But then when he embarrassed you like that, I didn't know how to come back from it." For a second, Camille said nothing. Just silence. Then she smiled, but it wasn't warm. "I see," she said. "You didn't know how to come back, until I did." Julia flinched. Camille turned to security. "Escort them out, permanently." They hesitated. Camille added, "They're trespassing, and I won't repeat myself." Security moved quickly. Back in her office, Mr. Adler was waiting, but Camille was thinking faster than she ever had, because something Julia said echoed in her mind. "I told him you were growing too fast." That meant Nathan hadn't been just arrogant. He had been influenced, intentionally, sabotaged. And Julia? She had been more than a friend. She was Camille's roommate once. She had access to Camille's files, notes, drafts. Something wasn't right. Camille pulled up the system logs and called IT. "I need a list of document access logs from 8 months ago, especially my client pitches and strategy outlines. Every file I saved under my profile." An hour later, IT sent the report. There it was. Her login credentials had been used weeks before her firing to download several presentations. One of them matched a pitch that had secured Nathan a big client 2 weeks before she was let go. Except, it wasn't his work. It was hers. Camille sat in stunned silence. Nathan hadn't just fired her for being useless. He'd stolen her strategy, claimed it, built buzz off her ideas, then removed her before anyone noticed. She looked up at the city skyline again. Her grip tightened. Now this wasn't about ownership. It was about justice. She wasn't done yet. Camille didn't sleep that night. She sat in her high-rise apartment, city lights glowing below, her laptop open in front of her, replaying every moment from her last few weeks at Halverson and Knox. The connections she once brushed off suddenly clicked in chilling ways. Julia's sudden disinterest in their friendship, Nathan's unearned confidence during meetings, and even the suspicious way her final performance review had been structured. It had all been orchestrated. The deeper she looked, the uglier it got. A second unauthorized access was listed under a ghost username that hadn't been active in months. J.Monroe88, the IP address. Julia's old apartment, back when they still lived together. Camille cross-referenced it with a login timestamp from a night she remembered clearly. She'd gone to bed early with a migraine, and Julia had stayed up working. Camille stared at the screen. Julia hadn't just encouraged Nathan, she had actively fed him Camille's work, possibly in exchange for a promise, promotions, a role in his shadow. And now they were trying to spin the narrative that it had been a mistake. She wasn't going to let this slide. The next morning, she called her legal team. "I want to pursue theft of intellectual property and conspiracy to defame. Full scope." Her lawyer raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? This could go public. Julia's well-connected." Camille didn't blink. "Good. Let it go public." Within days, the legal gears began to turn. Subpoenas were issued. Camille's new legal counsel found email trails, encrypted messages, and even forwarded memos from Julia to Nathan with Camille's name scrubbed out and replaced with his. It was surgical, calculated, and it was undeniable. But just when Camille felt she had a grip on everything, something unexpected happened. A woman named Sophia from Halverson's IT department, a quiet tech lead Camille had barely interacted with before, asked to meet privately. When Camille agreed, Sophia walked in with trembling hands. "There's something you should know," she said. "Before you were fired, I was asked to wipe a drive. Nathan said it was corrupted and he wanted a full reset. But the folder name, it was Q4 Projections, Camille. I thought it was strange." Camille's heart began to pound. Sophia continued, "I didn't delete it. I backed it up, on my own drive. I just had a gut feeling. I never told anyone. I've had it all this time." Camille stared at her, stunned. Sophia pulled out a USB and placed it gently on Camille's desk. "I didn't know what he was doing back then, but now that you're in charge, I thought you should have it." Camille's hands shook slightly as she plugged in the USB. There it was, her final project, the one that had mysteriously gone missing before the firm's biggest investor presentation. The one Nathan claimed she never completed. The one that supposedly justified her firing. Except it was right there. Perfect. Completed. Dated. Time-stamped. Camille's throat tightened. Not only had they stolen from her, they'd erased her. She looked up at Sophia, who stood waiting. "You didn't have to do this," Camille whispered. Sophia offered a small, sad smile. "Neither did you. When you stayed late that one night to help me rewrite my system scripts and didn't take credit. I remember that. Some of us never forgot who you were." Camille nodded slowly, emotion welling in her chest. The very next day, she called a full staff meeting. Not an email, not a memo. An all-hands assembly in person. The room was packed. She stood at the front, this time not as the invisible employee in the back row, but as the one everyone was now waiting on. She clicked the projector. On the screen behind her appeared the very document Nathan said never existed. Her Q4 projections. Her vision. "This," she began, voice steady, "is the presentation I was fired for, supposedly failing to complete. This was hidden, buried, deleted, intentionally." People looked around, murmuring. Some lowered their heads in shame. Camille didn't flinch. "This company used to reward theft, gossip, and favoritism. That ends today. If you supported the lie, if you benefited from my removal, if you helped destroy someone to move up, you know who you are, and I promise you, so do I." She let that hang in the air like smoke. "I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to rebuild something with integrity, and if you're not ready for that, there's the door." No one moved, but everyone sat straighter. As she walked out of the room, her inbox pinged with dozens of subject lines. "I owe you an apology? Can we talk? I was wrong." But Camille didn't reply. She had a press conference to prepare for, because tomorrow she was going to do something even bigger. Camille stood before the cameras, her blazer crisp, the company's rebranded logo shining on the backdrop behind her. She wasn't just the new owner of what used to be Halverson and Knox. She was now the public face of one of the fastest-growing firms in the industry. The press had picked up the story like wildfire. Disgraced employee becomes CEO of company that fired her. From nobody to powerhouse, Camille Rutherford's unlikely rise. Boardroom justice, woman fired in humiliation now controls entire staff. She spoke clearly, confidently, about innovation, about transparency, and about second chances. But not the kind that came from begging for forgiveness. The kind that came from building yourself when everyone else tried to break you. After the cameras cut and applause echoed through the room, Camille returned to her office, ready to finally breathe, but someone was waiting inside. It was Harper Lane, the woman who had once clapped the loudest when Camille was fired, the woman who replaced her as senior strategist right after her termination. Camille narrowed her eyes. "You're brave." Harper didn't look smug anymore. She looked nervous. "I came to talk," she said, setting a flash drive on the table. "I think you need to see this." Camille didn't move. "Why would I trust you?" "Because I was part of it," Harper admitted, her voice barely audible. "And now I know he set us all up." Camille frowned. Harper continued. "Nathan, he wasn't just trying to make you look bad. He was preparing for a buyout from the start. He promised promotions to half the execs if they helped force you out. Said you'd be an obstacle when new leadership came in. I took the offer. I regret it now." Camille sat slowly, staring at the flash drive. "What's on it?" Harper swallowed. "Recordings of strategy meetings, private conversations. Some of us started taping everything. We didn't trust him either, but we wanted leverage. You'll hear Julia. You'll hear him. Planning, using your ideas. even laughing about how they'd make you cry before they let you go. Camille's jaw tightened. The betrayal ran deeper than even she'd imagined. But then Harper added something else. There's one more thing. The day you got fired, I wasn't the one who leaked that investor email. It was Nathan. He sent it to himself, posed as you. That's how he made it look like you crossed a line. Camille's stomach turned. It hadn't just been a toxic office. It had been a premeditated character assassination. She took the flash drive wordlessly and turned to her computer. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "What do you want from me?" she asked, without looking up. Harper paused. "Nothing." Camille glanced back, skeptical. "I mean it," Harper said. "I'm not here to save myself. I already know I'm gone. I just wanted to make things right before I walk out." And just like that, Harper left. Camille played the audio. The laughter, the casual cruelty, the unmistakable proof of everything she'd endured. By morning, it was over. The files were submitted to legal. The lawsuit against Nathan and Julia turned into a public relations storm. Julia lost every contract tied to her name. Nathan was exposed, blacklisted, and eventually arrested on corporate fraud charges. His past deals filled with doctored numbers, fake projections, and misused funds. But Camille didn't celebrate with champagne or revenge speeches. She simply showed up to work the next day, as always. A young intern, fresh out of college, stopped her at the elevator. "Ms. Rutherford, can I ask, how did you do it? I mean, after everything?" Camille smiled slightly, brushing a hair behind her ear. "I didn't let their version of me become my truth," she said. And as the elevator doors closed, Camille knew she wasn't the same woman who had walked out of Halverson and Knox humiliated, surrounded by applause meant to hurt. She was the one writing the final chapter now. And this time, everyone was watching in silence. They tried to tear her down. They laughed when she fell. But Camille didn't just rise. She came back with power, with proof, and with purpose. Her story is a reminder. Never let someone else define your worth. The same people who mock you today might be the ones stunned into silence tomorrow. If this story inspired you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we have more powerful, real-feeling stories coming your way that you don't want to miss.